Okay, welcome once again to the new studio setup. While I was researching for the Gripply video, the last one, I came across mention of Dragon Magazine number 262 from August of 1999. Keep in mind, at the time I was only looking for information on the Gripply, but where I found them was in an article called Half Pint Heroes, which outlined 5 races making them playable in the ancient Advanced Dungeons & Dragons 2nd edition, AD&D 2. So I said to myself, why not update the other 4 to 5e 2024 and do videos on those too? After suggesting that to myself, I agreed and looked into the other 4 races. The Buck-on, Chitine, Ravenkin, and Tazloi. The Buck-on is unfortunately tiny rather than small, maxing out right around 2 feet tall, so it doesn't really qualify for our purposes. The Chitine seems interesting though, so we'll start with them. Much as the Vril I covered in a previous episode, Chitine are the result of Drow experiments. However, unlike the Vril, these experiments were abandoned, and so were the Chitine themselves. Though, as a group, they still generally venerate Lolth. I have to turn something off. As soon as it finishes loading, there we go. They still generate Lolth, but they despise the Drow, and will actively accept any chance to harm the Dark Elves if such an opportunity is offered to them. They were introduced in the Monstrous Compendium Annual, Volume 1 in 1994, and like our other recent subjects, were made playable in Dragon Magazine 262 and 99. They're described as agile and hardy, gaining a +1 to dexterity and constitution, but also as repulsive, with a -2 to charisma. Like most things 2nd edition, they originally had class and level restrictions and ability score restrictions, but we'll be scrapping those. As for their physicality, Chitines are 4-armed humanoids that bear an uncomfortable resemblance to spiders. As stated, they were created by the Drow as experiments, but were considered to be failed experiments. Their 4 spindly arms are long and have an extra joint, allowing them a greater range of motion than most humanoids. Their faces are human-like, but have compound eyes and mandibles that jut from their mouths. An average Chitine stands about 4 feet tall, with mottled gray skin and stringy black hair growing in a tangle from its head and down its back. Chitines, where did it go? Chitines secrete an oil that keeps them from becoming stuck in their own webs. Their palms and the soles of their feet are covered in tiny hooks that allow them to climb up walls and across ceilings. They spin sticky webs from an aperture in their bellies, but will be moving that to the base of their spine, just to make sense. And they use this webbing as a construction material for homes, traps, tools, weapons, and armor. Chitines will try to eat practically anything that moves. They live an average of 150 years. For languages, they were originally given Drow, Undercommon, Duergar, and Svirfneblin, which are the Underdark versions of dwarves and gnomes. And Other Dark Tongues as a vague catch-all. How about we just give them Dro and say they can choose up to 2 other languages? Though they were created from dark experiments, or through dark experiments, it's never really explained what they were created from. We could reasonably suggest from their originally given languages and their height that they were created from the aforementioned Duergar and Sverfneblin. But that would just be conjecture, and it doesn't really matter for what we're doing here. That's right. And my computer is horrible. There. Whew. I will add to their description here, pointing out that their arms are fully chitinous, but the rest of their body has patchy coverage of chitin. They don't have a full exoskeleton other than their arms. They actually have a full endoskeleton and skeleton and partial exoskeleton on the rest of their body, where chitin has grown in, say, around their web spinner, around their compound eyes, around their mouth, and in patchy plates over other parts of their body. The parts that don't need to flex or move very much, so they're not going to have this covering over their joints, their hips, their knees, etc. I will risk ridicule by trying to translate 2nd edition's AC9 to 5e in my head, but I think it'll be in the vicinity of 15, so we'll give them 14 as a natural AC. Anybody and everybody is welcome to tell me I'm wrong and why, so if you don't like what I've done or how I've done it, feel free, do it yourself and make it better than I do. I think that's more than fair. I do remember 2nd edition movement, so their original 12 base rate and 9 in webs works out pretty close to 30 speed and 20 in webs. Plus, we'll give them a climbing speed of 30, even upside down. So, what 2nd edition lists as special advantages and disadvantages, we'll use as traits, or the basis for traits in the 5e version. Special advantages, and I quote, Chitines can move up or down walls or even across ceilings at their full movement rate. That works out for what we've already determined. Back to the quote. Only in extreme conditions, very slippery or icy walls, for example, do they have a chance of falling. So we'll make it that they have to make a dex check on very slippery or smooth surfaces, otherwise they don't suffer any penalties from terrain while climbing. I'm pretty sure thick mud or quicksand might still cause them problems on the ground. Back to the quote. Their skin secretes an oil that prevents them from becoming entangled in their own webs. Chitines automatically make their saving throws, if one is permitted, to avoid becoming entangled in other webs, including those spun by giant spiders or those created with a web spell. If no saving throw is normally allowed, Chitine characters can still attempt a saving throw, with a +4 bonus to avoid entanglement in the web. This works as a +4 on their dex against any entanglement, specifically in webs, and they simply don't get stuck in their own webs. Back to the quote. Chitines spin webs, as spiders do, and some chitines can form this webbing into weapons, armor, or building material by hardening it through an unknown process. Chitines do not automatically possess any craft proficiencies that allow such construction, but a chitine with an appropriate proficiency, i.e. carpenter, blacksmith, weaponsmith, or armorer, is never lacking in raw materials. At the DM's option, the hardening process may require unusual substances. Okay. I would suggest the hardening process would require drying. heat, desiccation. Basically, once you make cookies, you have to bake them before you can eat them. Make sense? But remember that spider webs are flammable, so you don't want to bake them too long or heat them up too much. And you definitely don't want to expose them to open flame. Chitines can spin 1 foot of webbing per round. Like spiders, they can use their web strands to prevent a hard fall. This is good. As long as the chitine in question is capable of using its web, i.e. being conscious, mobile, and their web spinner is uncovered, then they can make a dex check of 12 to only take half damage from any fall. And if they get a natural 20, that will drop to 0. Chitines have 4 arms and can wield weapons in all 4 arms if they desire. They can use as many as 3 weapons with no penalty and can add a shield in their 4th arm without hindrance. If a chitine chooses to wield a weapon in all 4 arms, each attack is made with a -1 penalty. I disagree with this one. I do. Carrying 3 or 4 weapons in their 4 arms shouldn't induce a penalty. Remember, depending on their class and level, they might only get 1 attack per round. So the other 2 or 3 weapons are just there and neither being used nor getting in the way of each other. Special disadvantage. Chitines are sensitive to sunlight. They suffer a -1 penalty to their attack rolls in bright light. This is easy enough to carry over. Sunlight sensitivity works. It already exists in 5e. Did you notice, though, there is no mention of them having dark vision or infravision or anything like that? This means they're not diurnal or nocturnal. They're crepuscular. They can only operate in low light, like at dusk and dawn. They'd be blind in serious darkness, and if the light is too bright. So we know when you're safe from them, we know then when they can attack you. Or, as a character, you know when you can attack as one and when you can't. Monstrous traits. Appearance. Suck fluid from food and webs. Yeah, they have a haphazard, monstrous appearance. They'd be very unsettling to look at. Understandable. And yes, using and even having access to webs is just weird. Let's add some description to sucking fluids from food. How about, once they have their prey bound tightly in their webs, they can regurgitate a strong acid into the victim through a bite wound, then drink up the resulting slurry of melted flesh. They are incapable of digesting solid food. This is the only way they can eat to sustain themselves. That makes them horrific and monstrous. The rest of the list is just non-weapon proficiencies, kits, average height and weight, and thieving skill adjustments, none of which apply in 5e. The lifespan of 150 years is listed as well, and I guess that does apply in 5e. So, with what we figured out so far, what does a stat block look like? Let me show you. Okay. I honestly can't see these guys coming into use in any of the games I run. But they're still a resource for anyone else to use, especially, in a horror game or this close to Halloween. This might be coming out after Halloween, so I don't know. Apparently these little guys already exist as monsters in 5e, but they aren't playable anymore. They're in Monsters of the Multiverse. Mordenkainen's Monsters of the Multiverse is the book you have to buy to get them as a monster. But what I came up with provides a playable option. So point out any mistakes I've made or suggest things that I could do or have done better to make the Chitine more usable as a PC than what I came up with. And as always, like, share, comment, and subscribe. And I'll talk to you next time.